Hello and welcome. My name is Evgeny Rusakov and you're watching TVP World, interview from Vilnius. Lithuania has recently closed all its border crossings with Belarus following a surge in contraband balloons launched from across the border. The move has drawn strong reactions from Minsk and sparked debate inside Lithuania about the balance between national security and economic interests. To discuss the situation and what comes next, we are joined today by Lithuania's Minister of the Interior, Vladislav Kondratovič. Pone ministre, ačiū Jums, kad atėjot pas mus į studiją. Labai šaunu Jūs matyti pas mus šiandien.
Minister, thank you for coming to our studio. It's great to see you. Let's start with the most important thing. What is the current situation regarding the tension with Belarus since the border closure? Were you prepared for Minsk response?
Savo atsakymą. Ar buvote Jūs pasiruošę šitam Minsko atsakymui?
Tai sveiki. Iš tikrųjų, galim sakyti, kad šiandien mes patiriam prieš tai.
Hello. It's safe to say that right now we are experiencing, as before, multiple hybrid attacks from Belarus. We've been dealing with instrumentalized migration, and that's still the case. Migration is definitely being used as a weapon against Lithuania and the European Union. Sending contraband balloons to Lithuania is nothing new. It started a couple of years ago.
Tas elementas naujas, kuris atsirado ne šiandien, ne vakar, galbūt prieš porą metų, kontrabandinių balionų siuntimas į Lietuvą, po to, kaip atsirado fizinis barjeras, atsirado stebėsenos kameros ant pasienio, sumažėjo punktų uždaryti.
After a physical barrier was built, surveillance cameras were installed at the border and the number of crossing points was reduced. Other methods began to be used for illegal migration from the Belarusian side. Now it has escalated to such an extent that we can call it a hybrid attack against Lithuania. This is because we didn't see any action on the part of the Lukashenko regime to take the situation under control.
Lukašenkos pusės, iš Baltarusijos pusės suvaldyti tą situaciją. Tai yra patogu valstybei, tai yra patogu.
This is convenient for them because on the one hand it's clear that the smuggled products are manufactured in Belarus itself. It causes us trouble, so it's convenient, and in the case of a hybrid attack, this is probably the intended effect. Our response was to close most of the border crossings, which was a message not only to Belarus but also to the international community, signaling that this is indeed a very serious problem, and not only an internal one, because it has already caused the closure of certain airports and there has been a very significant threat to civil aviation and passenger safety. This is one of the destabilization tactics used by Belarus. Whether it was covert or not, I can't say at this time. Today, in order to control the situation, we have actually closed all channels through which criminal activity could be financed or encouraged in some other way. That's taken care of. When it comes to the Belarusian side, they have stopped or restricted the movement of vehicles registered in Lithuania, semi-trailers and trucks through Belarus, and have closed certain possibilities for crossing the border. One of the reasons was because there was also Belarusian cargo in those trucks. On the other hand, it was a form of putting pressure on us. From our side, I see a firm position. There is only one checkpoint that is still operating, namely the Medininkai checkpoint, which allows cars to enter Lithuania. Of course, the question arises about the vehicles stranded across Belarus, but it's for their operators to say how they are dealing with that. That's the current situation.
Minister, could this whole problem have been solved without closing the border?
Have you seen a single statement from Lukashenko about the problem with smuggling balloons or the threat to aviation? No. But in reality, Belarus is actually violating our airspace. The issue could have been resolved, but there was no action or acknowledgement on Minsk's part until the temporary closure of the border. Yes, I think that within a month we will be able to see whether there has been any impact and whether the situation has been resolved.
Has this impact been felt since the pushback on the smugglers here in Lithuania?
In general, I would say it's had an effect not only in Lithuania, but also probably in Belarus, because the number of balloon launches has since dropped. The whole of last week passed without incident except a very brief shutdown due to a drone. In this case, let's say we put out the fire, but we didn't extinguish it completely. We really have a lot of work to do domestically to eliminate and dismantle the smuggling links between Belarus and Lithuania. We definitely need to work on this, and we are moving in that direction. When it comes to pre-trial investigations, we are conducting them very thoroughly. Several institutions are working as a team, gathering and consolidating evidence, but this takes time. Second, a very important point, we have reviewed the legislative framework and found very few ways to tackle the issue from a legal standpoint.
You mean related to smuggling?
Smuggling, yes, and specifically this method. No one is talking about the fact that such a balloon, if it collides with an airplane, could cause a huge number of casualties and other damage. It would immediately cause a disaster. So we're discussing ways to combat such methods that could potentially lead to a catastrophe and tighten legal responsibility in those cases. The prosecutor's office, we at the Ministry of the Interior, and the Ministry of Justice certainly share a common goal: to tighten and pass laws introducing responsibility for such incidents if they lead to dire consequences. Of course, the international format is also important in this case, as are other channels used by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And the internal border closure on our side is also a signal that this is a problem. I think we must send a message that affects the other involved country as well.
Now, in regards to these smugglers and their balloons, they have been using them since 2019, and there were quite a few of them last year too. Why has significant action only been taken now?
One thing is clear: this aggression and hybrid attacks are clearly visible now. And the set of measures we are currently applying is tailored precisely to the extent necessary to control this hybrid attack. Regarding the criminal aspect, we're still working on this, and this year more than 100 people involved in such efforts have been arrested. About 50 cases have now been brought to court. We've been using a different approach, combining multiple cases into a single one, which allows us to treat this as organized crime in order to impose liability, and extending punishment beyond fines, because fines do not deter these people. Each have their own tasks, but today we are combining these forces and capabilities in search of a radical solution to this problem. This was already going on before, but it was more to prevent day-to-day activities. However, we're talking about deterrence and eradicating the problem to the greatest possible extent. Police are also involved in these efforts. Smuggling is a never-ending problem. As long as there have been states and trade, there has always been smuggling. But the impact of hybrid attacks is certainly an issue with us, and we will fight against them.
Since you mentioned business earlier, the Presidium of the Lithuanian Transporters Association, Linava, has already twice appealed to the Prime Minister regarding the crisis at the Belarusian border and how to manage this situation. It's true that the transport industry is now in a very difficult position. Please tell us, how has the Lithuanian government responded to these appeals and what actions are being taken to resolve this impasse?
Imami siekiant išspręsti šią situaciją.
Together with the ministers responsible for this area, we sent a letter to those responsible in Belarus, saying that we are letting those cars pass through our checkpoint, that this information should be already available, and if it works, the vehicles that are near the border should start moving. There are about 500 of them, which is quite a lot, plus trailers and semi-trailers. There could be a considerable number of them, and if we let them enter today, we will return them to Lithuania, which will certainly have a cooling down effect on the whole situation. We will also decide how to proceed regarding other vehicles. Of course, we have no contact with Belarus. We don't currently maintain diplomatic relations.
To what extent does this complicate the situation?
How can I put it? We can see that the carriers are not causing too much trouble. Somehow they manage to organize their business without those contacts, but the problem is that when an issue arises, it's more difficult to solve. But I think the government will find the necessary solutions even without direct communication and other means of contact, because this is not the first time we're dealing with this. Poland had the same problem a year ago. In fact, the restrictions were proportionate and they are still in force. We saw that some vehicles may have started using Lithuanian registration plates and so on. So in this case, we can clearly see the pattern that has already been established, but it's still working in Poland's case in terms of doing business. I think we will definitely sort this out here too. Yes, there will be additional costs, which carriers are probably already incurring and will continue to incur, but in this case, I think carriers should have assessed all the risks they faced when entering a market as unpredictable as Belarus.
Absolutely. And the last question. In your opinion, to what extent do external processes influence internal ones and vice versa under the current conditions? You can be brief.
I would say that if we are talking about the situation with Belarus, it was only after we took firm steps that we got the world's attention and heard from the President of the European Commission herself that there is support for Lithuania and that attention is being drawn to the fact that this is indeed a hybrid threat not only to us, but to the entire EU. This raised the issue to a very high level, and our partners from other countries, not necessarily from the EU, I am also talking about the United States, saw that we are indeed under a hybrid attack from another country. This helped us make those decisions and hope that the Belarusian side would also take the signal very seriously and understand that this time superficial measures would certainly not be enough. The problem must be addressed at its root.
Thank you very much for coming, Minister, and I sincerely wish you success in resolving this truly difficult situation.
Thank you very much.
And I would like to remind our viewers that our guest for today was Lithuania's Minister of the Interior, Vladislav Kondratovič. You're watching TVP World. Stay with us.